is because they couldn't build a nuclear bomb on time. And the reason why they couldn't build a nuclear bomb on time is because all their nuclear physicists were Jews who they'd kicked out. It's like, for me, that's just kind of a little microcosm of what could happen. You end up kicking out or being hostile to the Jews, and eventually this is going to bite you in the face. When are you going to learn? We are good, productive people. Wherever we go, we don't try and change the rules. We try and adapt. We try and survive, and then we thrive, and then we bring up with us the society around us. In America, for example, everybody's resenting on the Jews and the power and the money. What do Jews do with the power and their money that nobody gave to them, by the way, that they built from nothing, from coming to the country with $100 in their pocket, $2, $5, all these stories of poor immigrants that came into America. Nobody came rich. What do they do with that money? Jews are the biggest donors of non-Jewish causes in the United States. So yes, they make money because they work hard and they have a work ethic and they have a business ethic and they have an educational ethic. But then when they make it, they contribute and they produce. And you are now going to sacrifice those people for the sake of the people that are coming into your country, doing the terrorist attack and mooching off the system. Are you insane? These are the people that you're turning against. You deserve them to leave. That's the way I see it.
You're sitting here, somebody with British roots and connection, Gibraltarian, and many years here in Israel, not just a citizen, but as somebody that's played a part in this nation's politics and communications. So what is your message then to those Jews caught in it? If you say you deserve it for failing your Jews, but what do you say to the Jews?
That's a good question. What I would say to the Jews is, I think after October 7th, and especially in America, because I will say, I don't know whether you will agree or disagree with me, but I think in Europe and in Britain, there was always kind of a tension between being Jewish and being British. In a way, it was always kind of not blatant anti-Semitism, but there was always a little bit of under the radar, kind of under the surface, a little bit of resentment. That's what I experienced.
I always said that anti-Semitism is disliking Jews more than is strictly necessary.
Exactly. But that's exactly what was in England, I think. I've got a friend who worked in Parliament and he had a kippah, and basically he was told by another Jew, you don't have to wear your kippah here. In America, you had a lot less than that. In America,
imagine them saying that to somebody with a hijab.
It wouldn't happen. It would never happen. But this young man who was working in Parliament with a kippah, about 15 years ago, was told, 20 years ago was told, best not to be too Jewy. That never happened in America because being an American Jew was never a contradiction, because America was made up of that experience, the melting pot and all that. Being Jewish American was not in contradiction. And the Americans have woken up, and maybe their grandparents understood it, but they didn't. And they can't believe what's happening. Many of them are still in shock about what's happening and what's happened. And I think that's made a lot of people wake up. And I think what I would say to the American, to diaspora Jews is, first of all, protect yourself. Secondly, if you think you're going to blend in and kind of keep your head down and skip this one, I don't think you will. So you might as well lean into who you are, lean into your people, lean into your tribe. The Jews are trying to keep their head down.
But there's so much to be proud of as well, because you touched on it just a moment ago, which is to say, Jews are non-threatening people. They work hard, they contribute and what have you. But actually I would say as well that part of what we as a people have contributed, it's not just that we've made success and then contributed to the societies we're in. Many of the most fundamental values of the society, of course, we live in are actually based on Jewish values. The 10 Commandments,
of course,
were revolutionary in their time because they were not the norm. They were given as a guide for living, and they are fundamental to the sense of liberty and justice in the West, as are many other elements of Western values via Christianity, but originally from Judaism.
Absolutely.
That pride is something I see has been awoken in many Jewish people outside Israel. Are you saying then that is the inoculation for not being kicked out from the West? You know, it would be easy if you make Aliyah come live in Israel or safer.
Look, a lot of my friends are going out and saying, it's over, diaspora's over, just come home already. And there is a part of me that thinks, yeah, but there's also a part of me that says, look, a strong diaspora is good. The diaspora is stronger and safer because Israel exists, and Israel is stronger and safer because there's a diaspora. I do believe in that symbiotic relationship. I feel, though, that, again, you know how we said October 7th was an accelerator to people waking up or people hating on Jews more? That was an accelerator. I think it's also been an accelerator for people wake up to their Judaism, wake up to their identity. It's, you know, it's when somebody calls you something negative or dirty Jew that you are like, damn, yeah, I'm a Jew. And actually, I'm kind of proud. And the Judeo-Christian values, absolutely. But there's another theory, actually, which I think is very interesting, that they say that the world hates Jews for bringing the Judeo-Christian values of a conscience. You know, we brought that moral consciousness to the world, and there are people who are still annoyed about it. Like social Darwinism, which was Hitler's whole shtick, is basically survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
And Judeo-Christian values are actually against that notion that we let the weak just die or disappear. We bring up the weak. We help them. We try and make things equitable. You know, we're the first ever system of law that gives slaves, people talk about slaves today, Judaism gave slaves that existed way beyond or before Judaism or a sovereign nation or whatever. Judaism gave slaves a day off. It's called the Sabbath. And that day off was the beginning of workers' rights. That all came from the Sabbath. So yes, you're right. We brought in all these values that now humanity is enjoying, but maybe the hatred is because we brought those values.
And when it comes to slavery as well, I'm no expert, but Judaism also has quite a lot to say about the emancipation of slaves and
the ending of slavery.
The ending of slavery. So again, quite a current theme. There's this kind of old-fashioned view of Israel as a villa in the jungle. And to some extent, everything we've talked about just now is true. And yet Israel exists in the Middle East. And one of the challenges I've seen, especially again over the last 2 years, more acutely visible, is the vision and communication of Israel to the West is almost diametrically opposed to what it has to communicate to its own neighborhood.
Exactly.
Humanitarian concern must be displayed because it's part of Israel's fundamental values and it wishes to obey international law and norms. And yet there has been a sense that to talk to the Arab world has required a firm hand, an iron fist, a deterrent, almost a sense of unforgiving power. How can Israel maintain those values of social justice, Western Judeo-Christian ethics, and exist in this region where on its doorstep, and we've seen it proven, it's no longer hysteria, you can't say it's hysteria, it's confronted by enemies who maybe don't hold that. You've been someone that's interacted a lot with the Arab world, actually. Do you think there's a lesson that Israel is trying to teach the Arab world, or Israel needs to become a little bit more Middle Eastern?
That's a great question, and I think you really hit the nail on the head of the juxtaposition of where we find ourselves in. And almost maybe the reason why our communication war has failed so dramatically, because we're trying to do two things for two completely different audiences for two different reasons. You're right. We are a bastion of Western civilization, liberal values. On the other hand, we're fighting in the most vicious 7th century style war, which is what Hamas did on October 7th, when they raped and they killed and they beheaded people. That's 7th century war, and under the lens of a Western liberal democratic world. So that is the juxtaposition that we find ourselves in. And one thing I always say to people, and this is something I actually learned from the Arab world and from my interactions when I was involved in Abraham Accords work, people respect people who respect themselves. And I think that a lot of people miss that. the Arabs respect you more when you respect yourself. When you say, I'm up to here.